Perfect. And I apologize. Something on my computer has changed. So headphones it is. All right, call this meeting to order. Thomas Jefferson Planning District meeting this May 5th at 7 p.m. If we could get a notice of electronic meeting and public protocol, as well as a roll call.
This meeting of the Thomas Jefferson Planning District Commission is being held pursuant to Code of Virginia Section 2.2-3708.2, which allows a public body to hold electronic meetings when the locality in which it is located has declared a local state of emergency, and the catastrophic nature of the emergency makes it impracticable or unsafe to assemble a quorum in a single location. And the purpose of the meeting is to provide for the discharge of its lawful purposes, duties, and responsibilities. This meeting is being held via electronic video and audio means through Zoom online meetings, and there will be an opportunity for public comment during that portion of the agenda. Notice has been provided to the public through notice at the TJPDC offices, to the media, website posting, and agenda. Minutes will reflect the nature of the emergency. The meeting was held by electronic communication means and the type of electronic communication means by which the meeting was held. A recording of the meeting will be posted at www.tjpdc.org within 10 days of the meeting. And for the roll call, Councillor Payne.
Here.
Commissioner Sola Yates.
Here.
Supervisor Galloway.
Here.
Supervisor Andrews.
Here.
Supervisor O'Brien. Mr. Smith.
Present.
Ms. Wilkinson.
Here.
Supervisor Barlow.
Here.
Supervisor Jones.
Here.
Ms. Bishop.
Here.
Supervisor Herring.
Here.
Supervisor Rutherford.
Here. All right, thank you so much. I think we got a little bit of feedback on someone's television playing. So if you could mute that, that'd be great. Moving on to matters from the public. Comments by the public are limited to no more than 2 minutes. Do we have anyone who wishes to speak from the public? Sandy, have you gotten anything by email, online, website? Gotcha. All right. Is there anyone here who wishes to speak by showing your hand, or just go ahead and start speaking now? Okay. Not hearing anyone. I will now close the public comment section. Now moving on to the public hearing, draft home action plan. Sharice, do you want to start us out?
Sure. I'm gonna share my screen. Hopefully I won't freeze this time.
Okay. Can someone mute somebody?
So this is a public hearing about the Home Investment Partnership Program. Each year we have an annual action plan that goes over what we've done in the current year that we are in. So this federal fiscal year, the federal fiscal year will end October 1st, but we have to submit our action plan before it. So we do our action plan to be submitted usually by May 15th. This year, because of the pandemic and some changes, that has changed. We don't know exactly when we will be submitting the annual action plan, but we will go ahead and still present it here. So when we get that date, you can just send it in. So the Home Investment Partnership, it's a federal grant program through the Department of Housing and Urban Development. We receive grant money for our region for to provide decent housing, affordable housing to low-income households, and to help extend the capacity of nonprofit housing providers who work in those areas. The home program is served through the TJPDC Home Consortium, which consists of our regional localities, the City of Charlottesville, and the counties of Albemarle, Fluvanna, Greene, Louisa, and Nelson. The City of Charlottesville itself is the lead entity, but the consortium is administered through the TJPDC. So the TJPD Home Consortium is administered through us, and yearly we get about $600,000 each year, which is available to, I'm going to go to the next slide. It's available to be used for, and we have a list of what we can use the funds for: new construction, rehabilitation, down payment assistance, rental assistance, site improvements, acquisition of property, relocation costs, if needed, project related to soft costs, the running of the program, activities from community development housing organizations that we call CHODOs, and up to 15% of that has to be used for a CHODO. And then we also use 15% in-house to budget for the program and to run the program. So next slide. I should have made this a slide, click, not a scroll down, but so this slide, basically it's reiterating what was said on the first slide, but it also has who for each locality they have chosen to receive the money. We call them subrecipients, but each locality has chosen specific organizations to administer their funds throughout the locality. So Charlottesville usually uses Habitat and PHA, but RFPs are sent out. So, I mean, that can change, but normally it's Habitat, PHA, or AHIP actually. Albemarle County uses AHIP. Fluvanna uses the Fluvanna Louisa Housing Foundation. Greene uses Skyline CAP. Louisa uses the Fluvanna Louisa Housing Foundation, and Nelson uses the Nelson County Community Development Foundation. As I said earlier, the TJPDC actually uses 10% of the annual home funds. I think it's at 15%. I apologize for that. I think I confused that with the CHODO. So we get 10% of the annual funds for whatever the award is. HUD does require that we set 15% aside for a CHODO project. And the CHODO project basically has to add an affordable rental unit back to the region. So it can't be a region. CHODO funds, the actual 15% project, it rotates among the 6 localities. So there's a list of when it's someone's turn. So if the locality's turn comes up at that moment, it's their turn to be a CHODO. If they are shovel ready, they get the 15%. If they're not, because we have to dispense that 15% for that year, it goes to the next person in line who is CHODO ready or shovel ready. The remaining funds, after we remove the 10% for the administrative costs, and we remove the 15% for the CHODO project, the remaining funds are split equally among the 6 localities. So here's a breakdown. These are numbers for the current year. Like I said, we don't have the allotment yet because HUD hasn't released that. They normally have released it by now, but they haven't. But just to give you sort of an idea of how the funds are split, we got $676,615 for the current year that we're in. And so this is how it looks for how that funding is split. And for this year, Nelson County received the CHODO set aside. They have not started their project yet, but the money is waiting for them. Once they are shovel ready, soon I talked to NCCDF, we will get that 101,000 and above funds set up for Nelson County. So what the annual action plan does, like I said before, it sets up what we've done within the year, but also it makes a plan for what we plan to do in the coming year. So these are the goals. Sorry, it was highlighted. These are the goals that the localities have told me of how they're going to use their funding in the coming year. Once again, we did use the current year's numbers. Once we know what the actual numbers are, we'll go in and we'll actually fit that in there. But for now, we use, what we got for this year because we don't know what we're going to get, but it's usually around the same number. So Charlottesville plans to use their allotment to assist with rehabilitation of 60 homes. And usually what the localities do, they have funding from other places that supplements what they are doing. So you'll see that a lot with, used to assist with. Albemarle, they plan to rehabilitate 8 to 10 homes. Fluvanna, their plan is to rehabilitate about 4 homes and to create a new affordable rental units. They will, this coming year, will be the charter recipient. So they plan on using their allotment to create 4 one-bedroom affordable homes for seniors. Louisa, the plan is to rehabilitate 3 homes and to help create 20 new affordable units. Nelson, the plan is to rehabilitate between 4 and 6 homes and to assist with 5 low-income families in becoming homeowners. If you have any questions for me, please ask.
All right, are there any questions for Sharice at this time?
Hello, Lyle Soliates, Charlottesville.
Hey,
I'm still trying to kind of get my head wrapped around the thinking here. Is this split based on sort of efficacy, or what is the organizing principle for how this is organized? Like, why are we doing it this way?
Because it's been done this way since the inception, and we are under agreement from it's a 5-year agreement. And so therefore we have to do this until that agreement ends. And if we want to look at in the future, doing it differently, that will be possible. But at this moment, these are the agreements that were sent out. And right now we can think about changing, we can talk about that, but it's split evenly because that's the agreement at the moment.
Where are we on our 5-year egg timer?
Next year is when we have to do the 5-year, I forget the name of the plan, but it's the one that projects for the whole 5 years. And at that moment is when the new agreements will come into play.
Noted. Thank you.
Any other questions?
All right, not hearing any others. I will now open up the public hearing, correct? All right, is there anyone who wishes from the public that wishes to speak at our public hearing? I don't see anybody. Any written notice or anything that you guys have gotten, Sandy or Sharice or Christine? Nope. All right, I will now close the public hearing. Thank you so much, Sharice. Moving on to presentations. Legislative report, David Blunt.
Hi, good evening, Mr. Chairman and members of the commission. Just to give you a brief legislative update, we're a couple of months removed now from the General Assembly having adjourned in March, but we still have no budget. There's no state budget that's been approved to amend the current fiscal year or to adopt a budget for fiscal years 23 and 24. I don't really have a lot of information other than the chairs of the 2 money committees are talking. They haven't really been involving the rest of the budget conferees at this point, but at some point they will reach an agreement. They'll get the conference committee folks on board, and the General Assembly will come back to Richmond. They're currently in a special session that was called by the governor to adopt the budget. seems like it's just become more routine than the exception in recent years, where they'll extend the session or have to come back in special session to get the budget approved. And sometimes they'll go into May, they'll go into June, but I have confidence that they will get it done. Meanwhile, the state revenues are continuing to chug along in excess of expectations. I think we're about 9% projected for fiscal year 22, and they're running over 14% ahead. So could be that those numbers come into play with the new with the budget agreement. Could be that we have another fiscal year into fiscal year surplus. So just really a lot of unknowns on the money situation at this point. The General Assembly did get together a couple of weeks ago for its annual reconvene session, the veto session. That's when they consider the governor's vetoes and amendments to legislation. Not really much of consequence on the local government front. Probably the highlight from that day was a leadership challenge in the House Democratic Caucus, which the House Minority Leader was upended. And they're going to have some future discussion about who the new leader would be. Your memo speaks to a pair of locally requested bills that were approved by the General Assembly during the regular session. One really touched several of our localities. It designated some additional segments of the Middle James River as scenic. This came on the heels of some legislation from 2 years ago, I believe, that hit another part of the river, and this just kind of bookended that previously approved segment. And then Louisa County had a bill that was put in by Senator Peake to, I guess, bring some clarity and a little bit more flexibility for boards of supervisors in terms of how they vote to increase their compensation and the timing for doing that. Just to look ahead, a couple things, I listed several things there in your memo. One of the things I think it's going to be really interesting is this work group that's going to take a look at streamlining public notices. Right now, your requirements for posting notice or publishing notice in the newspaper, public hearings, they are numerous and all look very different. They're spread out over many different sections of the code. So hopefully this work group can make some headway into trying to streamline where those notices are, what they look like, and to bring some consistency to them. The Virginia Press Association has already been involved with this, and I actually had someone several years ago that just basically documented all of them, where they were, what they called for. So I've pointed that out to members of our staff. It's a pretty good resource if you ever run across trying to figure out what needs to be done. And then the other thing, I'll skip down to the third item there, just in the area of some studies. Whether or not we have a study on tax policy, which is something that the Senate Finance Committee would like to see. And in fact, that's become the reason for some of the, I guess, some of the brakes that they have put on tax relief that the governor and Republicans in the House were calling for. Whether that's something the Senate goes on its own and does, or whether it's a joint study, again, still don't know how that one will break down. There's also the JLARC, Joint Legislative Audit Review Commission, has been looking this past year, and I believe is going to report out around the end of the year, beginning of January, on looking at particularly on the state side, at the state income tax. So that may even play into what may happen with the broader study. And then finally, I think the other thing that's going to be really interesting, and you all know this, from year to year when your school division brings their budget to you, and knowing that that's a majority of your county or your city budget, is public education. And it's been, I think, about 20 years since the state did a really hard look at what are the true costs of K-12 education and what are realistic standards of quality. So this is a 2-year study that JLARC staff has been working on, and I believe they are going to come out with their results that in last fall, come out with the results of that sometime in the fall. And then that could spur some legislation, some budget items for the 23 session. So that's it in a nutshell in 4 or 5 minutes. Glad to take any questions you may have on that.
Any questions for David at this time? Anybody at all?
I'll take a question.
Yes, sir, Lyle.
Something we've been talking about on and off for many years in Charlottesville is allowing at least Charlottesville and maybe some other places to tax land higher than buildings as part of a sort of affordable housing idea. What are your thoughts on that? Is that a possibility in the future?
I know that that issue has been raised some in the past, and I think at some point the kind of came up through the ranks through the I want to say it was through the planners group that operates at the statewide level. I don't know that I recall seeing legislation on that submitted. I think there'd be a lot of education that would have to take place, not only at the state level, but probably also at the local level. But I would say something like that could come into play during a discussion of tax policy, and if they're going to take a look at local tax policy and maybe look at what are some additional tools or flexibility that might be available, that would probably be the time to bring it up.
Exciting. Thank you.
Mhm.
All right. Any other questions for David at this time?
I have a question here, Chair Rutherford.
All right, Mr. Galloway.
This JLARC study on the education spending, I'm sorry, how is this? How does this compare to what they did in 2015? Didn't JLARC do a study on education funding and basically found that in the Southeast that Virginia was the state that basically passed the buck to localities more so than anywhere else? So what is this study doing?
I think
more of the same?
I think my recollection back to the 2001 study was when they really looked at where the state was, what were they funding in the standards of quality and what some of the actual practices were. And I think on the heels of that is when you saw the state started making some additional contribution or recognizing in the SOQ some of the, I want to call them support personnel, but it was some of your specialists type positions, and then there were some adjustments with with funding for those. I think it's going to be more like that. What is the true cost, and what are the costs to really implement the standards of quality, not the standards of quality necessarily as they're written right now, but as you're finding that they are in practice out in the field.
I guess I'll go back and take a look. I could have swore there was a different study done in 15, and I think that SQ, that one came out, I think, later.
Yeah, I'll have to go back and look too. Again,
There was
my
one that
memory's
came
on
out
that
in
older
like
one.
fall, summer of 2015 that I thought was on funding of education. And it didn't necessarily get to the positions and all of that. It was really looking at the overall picture of state, basically that's state funding shifted to the localities because the state wasn't doing their part. But I'll leave that for another day.
Yeah, I'll go back and
Thank
look too and check in with you offline.
Thank you.
All right. Any further questions for Mr. Blunt? Going once, twice. Thank you so much, David. Appreciate all the hard work you're doing for us there in Richmond. Moving on to Charlottesville Albemarle Metropolitan Planning Organization Unified Planning and Work Program. Nice. It's a long way to say it. Sandy.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. And yeah, that's a mouthful for sure. I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen, and I get to talk to you a little bit about the MPO, which is certainly a significant program for the TJPDC. Just for those of you who aren't as involved with the MPO, this is the funding that we get. Our charges really to provide collaborative, coordinated transportation system planning for the urbanized portions of our area. So that includes Charlottesville and the urbanized portions of Albemarle County. We get federal funding for the MPO program through a couple of different sources. There's the Federal Highway Administration side, and then there's the Federal Transit Administration side. And just to be extra confusing, the Federal Transit Administration is referred to in the tables as FTA, so that's pretty consistent. And the FHWA funding sources are referred to PL or planning funding. So you might see that come up here and there. We get 80% of our funding from FHWA and FTA. Those are based on a formula, so we don't request that funding. They look at our population and they look at their calculations, and they tell us how much funding they're going to give us. And then our state agencies, VDOT and the Department of Rail and Public Transportation, provides another 10% match. And then there's a 10% local match contribution. Part of our requirements for receiving this funding is that we have to develop an annual work program that communicates with our federal partners what it is that we plan to undertake with the funding that is available to us. So every year we prepare this work program with our funding amounts, and we share that, and that is something that has to be approved by the MPO policy board, and then also has to be reviewed and signed off on by our state and federal officials that review our processes. So every year we get an annual budget. So for FY23, our federal budget allocation from the Federal Transit Administration side is $127,000. And then from the FHWA side, that's $195,000. So in total, it's a little bit over $320,000, which has been pretty consistent over the last several years. What's a little bit unique is that usually we are able to utilize all of our annual funding in the fiscal year that we receive it. But due to some of the staffing transitions that we had, we were able to set aside some of our funding for rollover. So the nice thing is that, if we're not able to use it within one fiscal year, we're able to, use it in future fiscal years. And we have the opportunity this upcoming fiscal year to program some of the funding that we weren't able to utilize this past fiscal year to do some really exciting things, we think, to support our overall transportation programming as we get ready to launch into our long-range transportation planning process, which I'll explain in a minute. There are a couple of different types of rollover. You don't need to necessarily get into the weeds on this, but you'll see that there are line items both for passive rollover. So those are only available on the FHWA side. The passive rollover means that we did not spend down our entire budget for fiscal year 21. And so that rolls over without us having to take any sort of action to utilize that funding. But we don't get it the next fiscal year. So we didn't get it in FY22, we get it back in FY23. So that's funding that's automatically added to our FY23 budget. And then we also have some active rollover, which is money that we have to request to become available from the previous fiscal year into the next fiscal year. So we have some active rollover that we are programming from both the FTA side and the FHWA side into this upcoming year. What that means is that where our budget is normally $320,000 for this next fiscal year, is actually closer to $450,000. You'll see that there's a line right here that says VDOT, and that's state planning and research funding. This is not funding that comes through our MPO. This is funding that the state provides for their resources and their staff to support the MPO programming. So we have state VDOT officials that come to our meetings and provide technical support and partner with us in a lot of these projects. That's their budget for their staff. And if you add those in there, the budget that comes through the MPO is this $450,000. And then the budget that we get when we add in the state staffing resources is a little bit over $600,000. So what we have to do is we have to show everything in this level of detail in the Unified Planning Work Program, and then we have to show what it is we're going to use this funding for. So this is how we have broken it out for our plans for the upcoming fiscal year. Task one are the administration functions. Those are just things we have to do to keep the program running meetings, invoicing, filling out our federal reporting requirements. We have a lot of federal regulations that we have to make sure that we're complying with. That's pretty standard. That's the administration function. In the long range transportation section, this is where a bulk of our funding is going to go. The big thing that we're going to be undertaking is the next 5-year update of the long range transportation plan. We're required to do these every 5 years. And like I said, having this additional rollover funding provides us a really great opportunity to get some technical support to really be thoughtful about our process and making sure that we are setting ourselves up to not just develop a really good plan that meets the needs of the communities for this cycle, but hopefully to help us work with consultants to develop processes that we can use in future rounds. We're already doing this through the technical assistance grant that we received through the Office of Intermodal Planning and Investment. And so we're hoping that we can continue to take advantage of this additional technical support to help us develop tools and processes that we'll be able to utilize moving forward. We're also going to need to be looking at the MPO boundaries again, now that all the census information is in from 2020 and updated. So we'll be doing, at least starting, we may not be able to complete it all in this fiscal year, but looking at what the potential changes might be to our MPO boundaries and talking about what, if any, kinds of actions may need to be taken based on that analysis. The other exciting thing that we're going to be doing that will impact the entire region and not just the MPO area is undertaking a transit governance study. We applied for a technical assistance grant through the Department of Rail and Public Transportation. And that grant is in the draft 6-year improvement program. So it looks like we will be able to move forward with that. And the MPO has committed to providing a portion of the match for that grant. So we're looking forward to continuing our work on and improving and increasing transit throughout the region.
Trial.
The short-term transportation planning, these are a lot of standard line items that we include in the budget, but they're also really important. We will have to update our 4-year transportation improvement program. This is something we have to do. It's a 4-year program that we have to update every 3 years. So there's a year of overlap between them, but this is basically approving the funding allocations for projects throughout the MPO. And then we'll continue to provide staff support and resources for completing smart scale applications for transportation projects. And then we also, this line item right here, I left off a very important item. It is supporting public outreach, it is supporting citizen engagement, but it's also supporting a much more enhanced and robust Title VI program, both that we're required to have for the MPO as part of our receipt of these funding, but will also be something that will benefit our agency as a whole. So that's what's in the draft work program. I'm happy to answer any questions. We have presented drafts to all of the MPO committees at their meetings in March, and this will be on the policy board's agenda later this month in May, where hopefully we'll be able to move forward with adopting it. But happy to answer any questions you all may have.
Any questions for Sandy at this time?
Sure.
Yes, Lyle.
Change the MPO borders. That's so fun. Could we break out of Albemarle County? Could we invite some others to the party?
It's potentially we could. So the process is we have to look at the eligibility. The census actually, the Census Bureau provides rulemaking on what the eligibility requirements are to be considered. And then even beyond that, there are some discussions that need to happen about the interest of both the participating MPO members and any additional MPO participants that may potentially be eligible to be included. So it's not as simple as just saying, hey, we want more friends, let's invite more people to the table. But we have to do the analysis, and then formally it's a request to the governor that the governor would have to approve one way or the other.
Thank you.
All right, any other questions for Sandy? All right, hearing and seeing none. Thank you so much, Sandy. Moving on to the consent agenda, minutes for approval for April 7th and April 22nd, the special meeting that we had. Are there any revisions, edits that need to be made on those two particular items for the consent agenda? If there are none, it is the chair's recommendation that we approve as presented. Can I get a motion?
So moved.
We have a motion for Mr. Herring. Do we have support? Need a second. second from, I think that was Dylan.
Yep.
All right, let's go ahead and do a quick roll call vote.
Counselor Payne,
Yes.
Commissioner Sola Yates,
Yes.
Supervisor Galloway,
Yes.
Supervisor Andrews,
Yeah.
Supervisor O'Brien, Mr. Smith,
Yes.
Ms. Wilkinson,
Yes.
Supervisor Barlow,
Yes.
Supervisor Jones,
Yes.
Ms. Bishop,
Aye.
Supervisor Herring,
Aye.
and Supervisor Rutherford.
Aye. All right. Thank you guys so much. Moving on into new business, Q3 financial report, Christine.
Every quarter, we pull the financials off of the consent agenda and go into a little bit more detail before asking for approval on those. Our net quick assets have increased from December of 21. They're currently at 908,000 as of March 31. Based on a 12-month average, we have 9.37 months available to us. Our goal is to have 5, so we're well above our goal. Anything above the 5-month goal, the commission policy is to then put that into capital reserve. So our capital reserve account is at 423,876. Unrestricted cash on hand. This is something I do want to note. Our goal is to have 4 months of unrestricted cash on hand. Anything under 2 is a concern. We are currently at 1.39. However, this is due to an error that occurred in clearing receivables for the month of March. And so working with Robinson Farmer Cox to remedy that error as it occurred, we should see that corrected in April. So while it shows up as a concern, it's not something we are actually concerned about, considering last month we were well above our goal. So we were in a really safe place. If this number continues to be low next month, then we will treat this as an actual concern rather than just an accounting error. Revenue less expenses. Last month, we had one of our strongest months since I've been with the agency. We had a net gain of $21,052. So our annual net gain to date is 36,856. So we're in very good position to be able to end the year with a strong net gain. Our profit and loss with the revised budget, we have gone through 75% of our fiscal year. We have collected 37%, but that is because of the massive increase from the body grant and the cigarette tax. And so since we have a small delay in contracting, we haven't collected any of the program revenue for body. So that's going to show a very small percent of revenue received. However, how we know we're in good shape is we've spent 67.5% of our operating funds. So we're tracking right where we need to be for the revenue that we're receiving and spending on operating expenses. Accrued revenues for the remaining 3 months, we have ample grant funding in order to meet our operating expenses. You can see that we have 127,971 available per month on average. Our average monthly expenses are 96,000. So we do anticipate our net gain increasing. That is assuming we're able to bill down all of our expected grants and programs by June of this year. I think that's all I have for you unless there's other questions. The financial dashboard is on page 64 in your packet if there's anything you want to draw attention to or ask questions on.
I do have one question, Christine, on the 127,000 available versus last month's actual 116.
Yes.
How do we stand regarding hiring for this fiscal year? Did that last month have a full month of several of the new positions and people that we've added to the staff?
Yes, it did. It had the COO full-time and it had the new planner full-time. So yes, that certainly helped us go from the 96 to the 116. And we anticipate that monthly expense getting even higher as we fill the positions for another planner 2, 3.
That answers my question. So
Currently advertising
the
for.
116 will go up, but maybe
Yes,
not more than the 127.
correct. That is the goal.
Thank
Any
you.
other questions on the quarterly financials? Then I would recommend approval of the January to March quarterly financials for FY22.
All right, do we have a motion to that effect, approving the financial report Q3 as presented?
Mr. Chairman, I'll do that. This is Keith Smith.
We have a motion from Mr. Smith. Do we have a second?
Andrea will second.
Andrea has seconded it. Is there any other discussion? Hearing no more discussion, let's do roll call vote. Ruth?
Counselor Payne,
Yes.
Commissioner Sola Yates,
Yes.
Supervisor Galloway,
Yes.
Supervisor Andrews,
Yes.
Supervisor O'Brien, Mr. Smith,
Yes.
Ms. Wilkinson,
Yes.
Supervisor Barlow,
Yes.
Supervisor Jones,
Yes.
Ms. Bishop,
Aye.
Supervisor Herring,
Aye.
Supervisor Rutherford.
Aye. Thank you so much. Moving on to the next agenda item, presentation of TJPDC officer slate from the nominating committee. It's got me on there. So nominating committee, we've spoken with each other. We figured out some names for our slate. This is not an action item at this time, but it will be in our next meeting, correct, Christine? All right. So the slate that has been recommended by the nominating committee is Mr. Ned Galloway for chairman, Mr. Tony O'Brien for vice chairman, Keith Smith for treasurer, and our staff, is it Christine that we normally put you as the secretary? This is a action item as is presented. Do we have to do motions from the floor at this time, or we just accept as presented? Christine?
I think you would want to ask if there are any other nominations from the floor, and if not, then you would
Great.
motion to accept the slate as presented.
Great. Are there any nominations from the floor that are different than what the nomination committee has just presented? Once, twice, 3 times. Hearing none. It is the chair's recommendation that we approve that slate that has just been presented, and I have consulted with those respective members and they would be potentially willing to serve. Okay,
Mr. Chairman, I move to accept the slate as presented.
we have a motion from Mr. Herring. Do we have a second?
From Jim Andrews.
We have a second from, was that Jimmy? Gotcha. All right. Any discussion? Hearing none, let's go on to roll call vote. Ruth?
Counselor Payne,
Yes.
Commissioner Sola Yates,
Yes.
Supervisor Galloway,
Yes.
Supervisor Andrews,
Yes.
Supervisor O'Brien, Mr. Smith,
Yes.
Ms. Wilkinson,
Yes.
Supervisor Barlow,
Yes.
Supervisor Jones,
Yes.
Ms. Bishop,
Aye.
Supervisor Herring,
Aye.
Supervisor Rutherford.
Chairman votes aye. Thank you so much, guys, for getting that done. We will then take an official vote in the month of June at our regular meeting. Moving on to the next item, TJPDC Corporation appointments. Christine, if you want to elaborate a little bit on that.
Or can you guys see my screen?
Not yet. It says it's sharing, but there's nothing there.
Yep. It says it's an error.
Oh, I think you lost your internet. Dale, did you not give them internet where she lives yet?
Good.
We've worked on it. I think she has it.
I have great internet. I don't know what's going on there. Can you guys see me again?
I see you.
It said unexpected error occurred in Zoom. You are being disconnected. I'm
That
glad
sounds like my
everyone
life.
got disconnected. Sorry about that.
Unexpected error.
Yeah.
That's- I should use that in most failed business decisions I might take. Unexpected error.
Did that one work?
Yes,
Everything
carry it
nice
away.
and done? All right, my apologies for that. So the Thomas, for those of you that have been with the commission for several years, you're aware of the corporation. But for anybody who is new with us, we really haven't talked about the corporation in the last 2 years. It has been fairly inactive, especially during the pandemic, and it has not had its annual meeting. But we are intending to do that annual meeting now. We just need to make a couple revisions per the bylaws. And so the TJPDC Corporation is the nonprofit arm of the TJPDC. It was developed in order to be able to access resources that are only available to nonprofits, but that still align with the mission of the Thomas Jefferson Planning District Commission. And so it has served several different purposes in the past. However, now it primarily serves as a fiscal agent for new organizations that are looking to become nonprofits. And those nonprofits' mission and activities have to align with those of the TJPDC. Currently, the corporation serves as the fiscal sponsor for one organization, Dementia Friendly Central Virginia. However, it has had in its past upwards of 4 or 5 organizations at any one given time. The corporation usually meets 1 time per year. It will meet in special sessions if there are nonprofits that reach out to us asking for us to consider being their fiscal agent. We'll then call the board together to review the activities of the nonprofit to ensure that they align with the TJPDC mission. The corporation board has to be at least 7 members and no more than 13. 6 of the directors are appointed by the TJPDC Commission to represent each of the 6 localities. 4 of those appointments need to be current commissioners. Previously, in the last 2 fiscal years, you can see on this list who the appointees were, with Supervisor Price no longer being a current member, as well as Supervisor Babiak no longer being a current member. We do need to fill the vacancies for Albemarle or Louisa. Assuming we have a volunteer from Albemarle and from Louisa to fill those current spots, we don't need to make any other changes in the other jurisdictions. If we're not able to get a current commissioner, then we would need Charlottesville or Nelson to appoint a current commissioner, and then Louisa or Albemarle would appoint someone that is a non-commissioner. Also, previously, the corporation is allowed to elect additional directors outside of the appointments of the TJPDC. Previously, it was Mr. Boyles. He was serving as the treasurer. It'll be recommended that I serve as the treasurer in that same role. And they also elected Sally Thomas and Alan Yost from Greene County. Finally, the staff that was there is our chief operating officer or senior program manager has always served as the executive director of the corporation. So the recommendation is going to be to the board when they meet in June that Ruth Emmerich serve as that executive director and secretary of the board. So really what I need from you all is volunteers, if we can get them from Albemarle County and Nelson County, and or a discussion if that's not something we're able to get from you. I did make some phone calls to see if we had those willing. So I'll open it up to see if we have volunteers from any of those. I'm going to stop sharing my screen in the meantime.
I will volunteer on behalf of Albemarle County for that.
Very
Good job.
good.
Yeah. Do we have to make a motion to put them on there?
Not yet. Once we have both, we can do a motion to
All right,
do both.
go Tommy.
Yes, Mr. Barlow.
I would like to offer it to Ms. Jones, and but if she doesn't want to do it, then I will accept it.
Rachel,
How
you've
did I
been
know
drafted.
you were going to do that, Tommy?
And you know, if you're really into it, you should certainly accept.
Oh, okay. Well,
There
I'll
you-
accept it.
I will
There
add
you
this
go.
detail, although I don't think it's much of a consolation, but it does meet the hour preceding an existing commission meeting. So it extends that meeting for anybody on the commission board, and we order dinner on those nights to ensure that those that are coming in person for both meetings are fed. Not that I'm doing bribery on this, I'm just sharing.
Free meal.
Yeah, that's fine.
Great. So Christine, at this time, we need a motion to appoint Mr. Andrews as the Albemarle rep and Miss Jones as the Louisa rep, correct? All right, let's
Correct.
get a motion to that effect. Tommy, drafter.
So moved.
We have a motion from Tommy to put Rachel and Jim on there. Do we have support?
I would second.
Second from Mr.
The
Herring.
Green, both of the Green commissioners
Okay.
simultaneous.
That's fine. Greene County. Dale Herring, second. Any discussion? Hearing none. Ruth, let's just do a quick vote.
Counselor Payne,
Yes.
Commissioner Sola Yates,
Yes.
Supervisor Galloway,
Yes.
Supervisor Andrews,
Yes.
Supervisor O'Brien, Mr. Smith,
Yes.
Ms. Wilkinson,
Aye.
Supervisor Barlow,
Yes.
Supervisor Jones,
Yes.
Ms. Bishop,
Aye.
Supervisor Herring,
Aye.
Supervisor Rutherford.
Aye. Great. Thank you so much. Moving on to in-person meetings and electronic participation policy. I know you have my name on here, Christine, but I'm gonna make you do all the talking.
Very good. I can do this. So we have at the TJPDC, staff has returned to full in-person work with the option for staff to request up to 2 electronic or remote work days. And so the entire staff is in the office on Tuesdays, and then we have a rotation of when staff come in to ensure that different program groups get to meet together on different days. So we are back in person. Front doors are open. We welcome the public in. We welcome you all in. We would also like to recommend that the TJPDC Commission begin to meet again in person beginning June 1. We are currently operating electronically under the City of Charlottesville's ordinance. We do recognize that the City of Charlottesville is working on a transition plan to begin to come back in person. And so we want to ensure that we are not necessarily caught off guard when they make a full decision to do so, and that we are ready to go. So we would like to recommend coming in June 1st for the first meeting. July, we do not meet, so there will be no meeting in July. And then August moving forward, our meetings will be in person in the Water Street Center. I included in your packet the 1-page office and meeting policy that we included that shares that we will use the CDC's guidelines with regard to masking and COVID mitigation in the office. So if the CDC is recommending that masks are used indoors, then that's what we'll use in the office. If they are saying that our community levels are low enough that it is a personal choice, then that's what we will use within our office as well. The second page that I included in your packet is the remote electronic participation policy that has already been approved by the commission. We anticipate bringing a revised electronic participation policy to you, I believe, sometime in August, since there are changes in the state law regarding electronic participation that are going to go into effect September 1, David? Yes, he's nodding, September 1. So on that, I don't know that we need a vote so much as making sure we have consensus among you all on any questions that you might have about returning in person to the Water Street Center starting in June.
I have a question. Is that an option? Because it saves me 84 miles by doing it remotely. And I certainly prefer that, but I'll do what everybody else does. But if there's an option to do it remotely, then I would certainly utilize that.
David, do you want to speak to the electronic participation policy?
You said David, right?
Yes,
David.
you're muted, David.
Oh, I thought I had unmuted, but I didn't. You'd think after 2 years, I'd be able to do this. So currently, the law allows, and your policy allows, remote participation in certain circumstances. That's, if you have, emergency, sickness, that type of thing. If you're sick, you have a disability, you're caring for someone, you can use that as, many times as you want during the course of the year. If it's a personal matter, you can use that 2 or 25% of meetings in a year, which I think for our commission, typically meeting 10 times a year, we would go with the 25%. Rounded up would give us 3. That is pretty much going to stay the same under the new provisions that will take effect September 1st. you know, you may be aware that the bill that passed will not allow local government, like your local governing bodies, your school boards, your planning commissions, to hold all virtual meetings. But the provisions of this new law will allow all virtual meetings up to 2 a year or 25%, whatever greater. So we could do a meeting just like this 3 times a year, and then it will still have those additional provisions carried over that will allow an individual member to participate remotely as you can now. So to answer your question in probably one sentence, I don't think you're going to be able to do it every meeting, but you would have some flexibility to do it some.
Thanks for the answer.
So, you know, I understand, and we've developed our lives, and I have to admit, you know, having sorry about all these notifications, but having this time period where we're going back to reality is so cool. I mean, we've been going on this for how many months now, Christine? Like
Long time, March of 2020.
So, you know, I'm excited for this opportunity, and that my last day meeting as chair will be in person. So Mr. Herring doesn't know what that's like, do you?
I had my first few in person.
Yeah.
So
Anyway,
you should have your last one in person for sure.
yeah. So what I would suggest is that we take this step forward into an in-person meeting, and with those exceptions, and hopefully that'll help you out some, Tommy. I drive from Nelson County, so I feel your pain. It is a drive. I think Rachel doesn't have it too bad. She lives over here near us, so, or near Charlottesville. We need an action on this,
12
right?
miles from the city, so I can't complain too much.
No, you can't. You're not allowed to. And Tommy says you have to be here every meeting, fish. Okay.
Yeah, I'm sure he does.
That's right. What is the action you need from us, Christine, to just say implement the in-person meeting in June with the
It says-
electronic participation policy?
Yes, it doesn't require an action. We will just return to in-person coming June 1.
Gotcha. Guys, I'm gonna see y'all in June. I'm excited. I haven't seen I mean, I guess we've had members here who I've never seen in person.
And then just to make sure I add, we will always be offering all of our public meetings remote, hybrid. And so while we will be in person, we will still allow guest presenters, staff, and additional staff to the core group, and any public to be participating electronically. So we'll have both options available.
Great. Okay. Is that all we need to do? Well, all right, wonderful. Moving on to resolutions, home annual action plan resolution. Christine.
Great. This was the action plan draft that was included in your packet and it's presented on earlier in the meeting. So we would like to recommend a motion to approve the resolution adopting the federal fiscal year 2022 home annual action plan as presented, knowing that when we receive our allocation, those numbers will be revised to meet our allocation.
All right, do we have a motion to do that resolution as presented? Don't
So
go
moved.
all- Mr. Herring made a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second that, Andrea.
Andrea seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, let's go on with the roll call vote. Ruth?
Counselor Payne,
Yes.
Commissioner Sola Yates,
Yes.
Supervisor Galloway,
Yes.
Supervisor Andrews,
Yes.
Supervisor O'Brien, Mr. Smith,
Yes.
Ms. Wilkinson,
Aye.
Supervisor Barlow,
Yes.
Supervisor Jones,
Yes.
Ms. Bishop,
Aye.
Supervisor Herring,
Aye.
Supervisor Rutherford.
Aye. Moving on to FY23 operating budget, Christine.
Share my screen and hope there's not an unanticipated error again. Very good. Can you guys see my screen?
Yes.
Yes.
Great. So this is the FY23 operating budget, presenting it to you all tonight for consideration and adoption. A detailed cover memo and presentation were given in the April commission meeting. So I'm not going to go back through the whole presentation all over again. However, I am going to highlight 3 minor changes that have occurred since that draft was presented to you. The first one is the Federal Transit Administration sent us revised numbers for the MPO, which was an additional $16,134 for our budget. So that would reduce the reserve transfer that we would need to balance the budget by the same amount, $16,134. Additionally, the watershed improvement budget was amended to allow us to roll over $10,000 into next year so that we can plan for an in-person river cleanup event that would be best suited for late summer, early fall. So we moved that into FY23 from FY22. That also brought our reserve transfer needed to balance the budget down for next year. In light of the increased need for legal counsel that we have related to body cigarette tax, contracting with Virginia Housing Development Grant, we have included an additional $10,000 in legal fees just to make sure that we're covered. So that increases the reserve transfer that we need to balance by $10,000. And the cumulative effect of all 3 of those edits in the budget is to drop the amount of reserve transfer that we would need from $71,000 to $57,000 in order to balance the budget. So presented to you tonight is the FY23 budget of $41,153,084, both in revenue and expenses. It is a balanced budget, and staff would recommend a motion to approve the FY23 operating budget, revenues, and work plan as presented.
All right. Do we have any questions or a motion to that effect, approving as presented?
Mr. Chairman, this is Keith Smith. I'll make a motion to adopt the budget.
Okay, Mr. Smith has made a motion. Do we have a second?
Andrea seconding again.
Andrea has seconded again. Is there any discussion? Hearing no discussion, let's go on with the roll call vote. Ruth?
Counselor Payne,
Yes.
Commissioner Sola Yates,
Yes.
Supervisor Galloway,
Yes.
Supervisor Andrews,
Yes.
Supervisor O'Brien, Mr. Smith,
Yes.
Ms. Wilkinson,
Aye.
Supervisor Barlow,
Yes.
Supervisor Jones,
Yes.
Ms. Bishop,
Aye.
Supervisor Herring,
Aye.
Supervisor Rutherford.
Aye. Thank you so much. Thank you, Christine. Moving on to Executive Director's report. Christine, again.
All right, I've got a couple highlights for you. The Executive Director's report has further detail included in your packet. I'm starting on page 86 with my updates. The administrative update is following the lead of the federal government, state government, and your local governments. We are going to observe Juneteenth this year as a staff. We anticipate bringing to you all some updates to our employee handbook. It will include this Juneteenth, but it will also include some other revisions. But we wanted to go ahead and share with you that we are going to observe that holiday, even though it has not yet officially been adopted into our employee handbook. Also, the third quarter report that we send around to each of our member jurisdictions, I included a copy in the packet for you. For the housing program, the highlight that I wanted to give is that the Regional Housing Partnership continues to move toward adoption of a strategic plan. The executive committee has a recommended strategic plan that they will recommend to the full partnership in their June meeting for adoption. Also, formal award letters were sent out to all of our Virginia housing development partners, as well as a press release was circulated. We're very excited to begin to start that project. We are currently working with legal counsel to do the final parts of the contract between us and those subrecipients. And then transportation updates, the Commonwealth Transportation, as Sandy shared earlier with you all, the Commonwealth Transportation's 6-year plan does, their draft plan does have recommended funding for both the Regional Transit Governance Study, which would be a follow-up to the Regional Transit Vision Plan, so that we can then look at deep dive into the governance of all of the transit operations in our area and potential funding mechanisms that can be used to implement the recommendations that come out of the vision plan. So this will dovetail nicely with the current work that we're doing in transit. The Zion Crossroads Gateway Plan had a public meeting on the 19th. Different sessions held in Louisa County for both the Louisa and Fluvanna project, and there were approximately 90 attendees in both sessions, and we got a very good turnout. We were very pleased with both of those two meetings. Staff is doing bike ped infrastructure inventory in both Standardsville and Scottsville right now as a part of the rural transportation work plan. So if you see two of our folks on the side of your road with measuring tapes and walking around, they are in person doing that infrastructure inventory. And then a couple of other updates is the consultants for the Regional Transit Vision Plan. As a part of that scope, they will present both to Albemarle County Board of Supervisors and the City of Charlottesville's City Council. Staff at the TJPDC will be presenting in Fluvanna, Greene, Louisa, and Nelson the same presentation given to show some of the recommended goals that they have, as well as constrained and unconstrained system configurations of what regional transit could look like if money were an option, and then constraining that to what is likely or what is possible if there were something like a transit authority in place. And then finally, we have begun reaching out to planning staff in all of our rural localities to develop a rural transportation strategic plan so that we can have a better methodology for how we're identifying what goes into the annual work plan that's created for our rural communities transportation planning. And then rideshare is currently working with all of the region's transit agencies together on a joint marketing campaign to promote Clean Commute Month. If you've seen some of our social media posts about sharing images of your clean commute, and then there are drawings and prizes associated with that. Environmental programming, our staff will be in each of the 6 jurisdictions presenting the draft hazard mitigation plan for feedback that is to be submitted in the fall for approval. And then staff will also convene a working group tomorrow, May 6th, with the Rivanna River Basin Commission to identify some priority initiatives that the RRBC can be working on annually. So we're very excited to get that ramped up. It has been very exciting and impressive to see Isabella O'Brien on our staff, since she has an environmental science background, to really take the RRBC and the Watershed Improvement Plan and some of our environmental programming and put a little bit of different spin on it and different life into it. So we're excited to see where this goes and what the RRBC accepts as some activities moving forward. That is all I have in my update, but happy to take questions if you have any.
All right, any questions for Christine at this time? Okay, hearing none, let's move on to other business roundtable discussion. Thank you so much, Christine. We'll start out with Fluvanna. Keith, if you're still with us. We'll circle back to Keith. Let's go to Albemarle. Jim.
All right. I won't take it all, but I'll give you a few highlights. We did just yesterday adopted our tax rates in our budget, and started our onto our new year. We have, of course, kept our real property rates flat, the same as before, although the appraised values have gone up. We dropped the personal property tax rate substantially because of the inflated values of automobiles right now. And we increased the meals tax to 6% and TOT to 8%, matching what used to be Charlottesville's. And we added a plastic bag 5-cent tax, not expected to bring in a lot of revenue, but to affect behavior, I guess is the main purpose. In addition to that, we had a big presentation yesterday on incentives and ways to get at affordable housing. We had a previous presentation that was on an affordable housing overlay that there was a lot of concerns about some of the things that had been presented in that, and staff went back and actually presented kind of a different concept that's available to Albemarle under the state legislation for what's called an affordable dwelling program. And this ADUs, affordable dwelling units, as opposed to auxiliary dwelling units, concept essentially will give us ability to do zoning text amendment approaches to density bonuses with some various things that are being discussed at this point as developer incentives like reduced tap fees or some and some other options. That is just now just back with the staff to come up with some ideas on how to implement it. We also did our first recommended a support letter for our first DORA, that is a designated outdoor refreshment area. So Stonefields would do a music program during the summer and have the ability for people to carry their beverages around with them outside. And those are some biggies. We have a new big expanded public-private partnership out in Crozet. I'll leave it to Supervisor Galloway to sort of fill in some details. Oh, I also want to add on our affordable dwelling unit that we had a guest speaker at the meeting. He didn't know it when he came to the meeting, but Supervisor Galloway recommended that we hear from Keith Smith, and he gave a nice summary of thoughts. So thank you, Keith.
All right, thank you. All right, rest of Albemarle, Ned.
That's right. We asked Keith to speak. So that just make that point clear. And the DORA is so you can legally walk around with your drinks. Not that I would be suggesting any of you would be doing so, whether it was legal or illegal. So we welcome you to that, to participate in that. The only things I would add is that now that the budget is behind us, we'll start getting to work on transportation priorities. It's time for our transportation priorities list to get updated. So the next couple months, we'll see that coming to pass, which is always takes the interest of the board. A couple of the highlights in the budget that we passed, we were able to pull ahead some Department of Social Services positions that were programmed to start in January. We pulled those ahead to July. And then we were able to add an additional FTE to that department. And that was just a highlight in that particular budget. And I forgot to mention this at our last meeting, but I think it may be of interest. There's a group called Impact, which is the interfaith movement promoting action by congregations together. Myself, Supervisor Malik, and then Councilor Payne and Mayor Snook were at their Nehemiah Action meeting this past March. I bring this up because an item that usually it's focused on issues that are going on in the city of Charlottesville or Albemarle County. But this time around, they had both myself and Councilor Payne stand up as representatives of the TJPDC, advocating for our votes for the fiscal year 23 rural transportation plan, transit plan, which we did end up passing, I guess, within a week of that happening at the beginning of April, but I didn't think to mention that. But this body might know or might be interested to know that there's a very large, I mean, it's a couple thousand folks are involved in Impact, and it's all the various congregations that exist in the two localities. So it's quite a group, and it was interesting being in front of a couple hundred people again. It's been a while since standing in front of folks like that, being asked their questions and voicing the support. So I think, not to speak for Councilor Payne, but I think both of us, we were pretty adamant in our affirmative that we would be voting for that, and then in fact did vote for it. And I know that Impact appreciated it. Thank you.
Right. Thank you, Mr. Galloway. Appreciate that update. Let's go to Louisa. Tommy.
We had a very pleasant meeting Monday because the budget is finally behind us. And that can be the most frustrating thing we deal with all year, for me anyway.
Yeah.
And that is behind us. We went into appropriating funds for different, the ones that were in the budget, and had a very smooth meeting. So we're back to normal and have the budget behind us. And so I look forward to some good meetings coming up.
Great. Thank you, Tommy. Rachel.
Yeah, I'll second that. We're done with the budget. We've made some adjustments to our seniors and our disabled. That was the last final part of our budget that we worked out this past Monday. And we also did something that Louisa has been rolling around for years. We passed a dog at large ordinance. I know many counties have it.
That's
We have-
exciting.
it is. We've not. It was a little bit of a rocky road. But, the county is growing a lot, and we're finding that, we're not just the rural farms. We have a lot more suburban areas and development areas, and people aren't so mindful of their animals. So hopefully this will help some of the issues we've had in the county. Can't think of anything else. We've been pretty, we've also had a lot of, just on side notes here, I don't know if your counties have had it, but we came out of winter and I think 2 years of COVID with a heck of a lot of trash in our county, all over our roads. And so, we have a great community coalition that's been working really hard and trying to get that cleaned up and come up with some initiatives and really think outside the box for trash and education at the school level and get the community on board. So we've been working on that. And I don't know about Tommy, but I've been noticing the roads are looking a little better around our county here. So that's about all for Louisa. Nothing as exciting as Albemarle.
Thank you, Rachel. Yeah, the dog ordinance thing is Nelson County. We did that in recent history, and it's not for us. It was it's not a leash law. It is no at-large dog law is what we did. I'm sure you all did the same thing. And
yeah, we
I
did.
think I met every single dog hunter that I didn't even know was a dog hunter within about 2 days at my house.
Well, we were really clear straight up. This excludes this. We are not targeting dogs, hunting dogs. This is not hunting dogs are not part of this. So we tried to squash that right up front. But then, we had people who were, well, what about farming dogs? Oh, well, that is true. We do have a few farm areas and dogs that kind of go at large, protecting animals and so forth. So we had to tweak it a little bit. You'd be amazed how many ways to tweak a dog ordinance.
Absolutely. All right, moving on from Louisa, let's go over to Greene. Andrea?
I could mention that we do have a lot going on road work wise, lots of things coming up. We have 3 J turns maybe coming on our section of 29, which will be a whole new idea and something we have to get used to. We have the VDOT quarterly report coming up at the next Board of Supervisors meeting, which will have the 6-year rural road improvement plan. There's stuff there. And we have a smart scale project, 2 of them actually, that are about to get underway in Greene County, actually long awaited. So that was a lot. I would say I personally sell hot dogs at the soccer concession at the Greene County Park, and those kids are eating twice as many hot dogs as they've ever been able to do before. They were frustrated from lack of hot dogs during COVID, and so they're really going wild with them now, which is fun to see.
All right, thank you, Andrea. Mr. Herring?
Yes, sir. We approved our tax rates at our last meeting. We did not lower our tax rates. We had wanted to look at, or at least I did, the personal property tax. Unfortunately, the data we had was inconsistent each time we received it, so we weren't quite sure exactly what to do there. So our tax rates remained the same. We did have a question about the full funding of JAUNT, and we worked through that issue, and we are fully funding JAUNT as requested in case anybody's interested. The way we set it up was we would fund them the administrator's recommendation in June. The additional funding would come in January. And then we had the CEOs go meet with the Greene County Board quarterly. We have a liaison appointed to their board, and there's a memorandum of understanding. The reason being is we had several citizens complain about JAUNT after the transition from Greene County Transit. So we feel pretty good with the changes made that will work going forward. The VADI grant, so far some residents are very excited. We have had Rappahannock Electric Co-op send letters out or emails out letting people know they are doing work on the poles. It doesn't mean we'll have internet within the next couple of weeks or next couple of months, but the citizens are excited with the fact that they're receiving notifications at this point. And then the other news, we did not pass clamping in Greene County. It failed 4-1. We did have another county supervisor rudely interrupt our meeting, but
I regret nothing.
yeah, that was a very interesting meeting. I think we ended up having close to 64, 65 people speak, and then probably another 10 or 15 more virtually. For some of the supervisors, water was concerned, others was traffic, but that did fail 4-1. I was the individual that voted for it. And for the most part, I think that's all that we have. We'll pass our budget this coming Tuesday, unless there's some disruption that I'm not aware of. We've had some interesting conversations. Hopefully we've answered everybody's questions, and that's all we've got right now.
I have to admit, the only county that was mentioned more than Greene in that meeting was probably Nelson. So after about Nelson County getting the 4th or 5th shout out, and I got the 5th or 6th text message, I had to join in on your meeting. I had no choice.
Yeah,
Huge fan base there.
I appreciate it. They were actually comparing, I think, your tourism industry and your TOT revenues, which was mentioned several times. And I think it was mentioned at some point that Nelson County would welcome this type of development. We tried to get that point across. We didn't go over very well, but we did attempt to do so.
I got you. Thank you, sir. Moving on to Charlottesville. Mr. Payne, are you still with us?
Yeah. Sure. I guess the biggest thing is we passed our budget last month. Started in a difficult place, but ended up, I think, in a place that hopefully most people could live with. Some of the highlights are we had 10 million invested, which is in affordable housing, the amount called for in our housing strategy. We've established a transit fund for the first time and put 2 million into that, hopefully to try to move our system to some more fixed 30-minute routes. Significant investment in affordable housing project on Park Street, and investment in expansion and renovation of Buford Middle School. We did increase the meals tax rate by 0.5% and did not adjust the personal property tax rate. Returned to in-person meetings last month, and post-budget, I guess some of the big things are we're hoping by the end of summer to have an ordinance related to collective bargaining to move forward with allowing collective bargaining for our public employees, which will obviously be a pretty substantial change for us. Zoning rewrite process is continuing, still a long way before there are deliverables there. And sort of reinvigorated our climate action planning process to hopefully have some specific deliverables and budget line items by the end of the year to incorporate into next year's budget. And yeah, those are some of the big things I can think of.
All right. Thank you, guys. So thank you, Mr. Payne. Moving on to Lyle.
Yes, thank you for talking about the budget things. That's wonderful. Focusing on planning things. 5th Street safety study. We've got a Strode. We've got a big Strode on 5th Street. It's dangerous. We know it's dangerous. We're doing something about it. We're doing a big sort of public engagement and sort of design process to try and figure out what do we do. I'm very optimistic that we'll be able to figure something out. This is one of the few situations where we have plenty of space to do whatever we want to do. The hard part is all agreeing what that is that we want. Rezoning process is behind schedule, which is disappointing. Everybody's working hard. There's just a lot of work to do, and it's still in process. Nothing has been shared publicly yet. I'm hopeful that we'll see something next week to just begin the public conversation. But don't hold me to it. We're doing our best here. It's a hard one. Climate action plan, very enthusiastic about that. Survey went out. I haven't seen anything back from that yet. Also, Commissioner Stolzenberg encouraged me to formally submit a recommendation to the state to adjust our building code to allow single stair residential construction up to 6 stories. So I did that and that is being formally reviewed. I posted in the chat an article out today in the Mercury talking about that. It's not done. We don't have formal language done. There will be safety elements included. We're not just going wild here. This is a code review process, but I'm very optimistic that this will lead to good things in Virginia. That's what I know.
Thank you so much, Lyle. Moving on to Fluvanna, I think Mr. O'Brien can't make tonight. He had some family stuff come up. And we have Keith. Keith, are you back with us?
I am. You all might actually be shocked by this, but I really don't have anything to say today. So I know that's a rarity in my case, but I do want to take a moment and thank my fellow Albemarle County commissioners for the opportunity yesterday to speak about housing affordability in front of the board. And I considered it an honor and a privilege to be invited to do that. So I wanted to formally say thank you to those commissioners and Albemarle County Board of Supervisors for allowing me to do that. Mr. Chairman, that is all I have other than happy Cinco de Mayo, everybody.
Yeah, y'all are cutting into my taco time. All right. Thank you, Mr. Smith. Moving on to Nelson County, Dylan.
I do not have anything tonight.
All right. Nelson County, we were pretty exceptionally busy. We have not finished our budget. We've kind of finished it. We're going into public hearings. We've lowered a lot of taxes and looked at raising some. One specifically was a transient occupancy tax. We've had a very strong reaction from our tourist industry, as one might imagine. And I have a lot of meetings over the next week and a half with the respective business owners and suppliers and so many different groups. So that's going to be exciting. We have a manufactured housing community that's going to be coming up for a vote. I don't know what that'll be like. I do know this, that it's we'll probably have a very similar reaction as Greene County's glamping sites. So having a very large community involved with that. Our comprehensive plan is on the up and up, hopefully here soon, scheduling meetings. We're in the middle of a county administrator search, and we are now going into interviews over in, I think, like next week, if I'm not mistaken. So I have a full week ahead of me. If anyone has any suggested questions for that particular role, it would be great if you could email them to me, just so that we can compile that. So for those like you, Mr. Payne or Mr. Herring, and anyone else who's done that process, I think some scripted questions that you guys might have would be awesome, and I think be helpful as we go into the interview process. We have a good list, but it sure be great to get somebody who's experienced it before. Beyond that, we have a lot of exciting developments with changing of administration and comprehensive plans and so many other different roles that are coming up. I look forward to a lot of change in the next year. Nelson County is going to be the same county, but in terms of governing and how it operates, it's going to change quite a bit. But beyond that, I have nothing else to add. Christine, it looks like we got the election of the officers, the housing preservation grant, PDC smart scale applications, a rural transportation smart scale thing, and another VATI broadband update at the next meeting. Is there anything you want to add?
No, the only thing that I thought of that I didn't put in my executive director's report is the U.S. Department of Transportation held a couple of webinars this past week on some Infrastructure Act funding that's going to be coming forward at about $1 billion a year for 5 years. And we're paying attention to be looking at one of the eligible activities is a comprehensive transportation safety plan. So it made me think of it when I heard you, Mr. Sully Yates, talk about the 5th Street. So we will be in touch. I already have some meetings set up in some of your jurisdictions with staff to talk about the interest in joining in as a regional application for those funds, since they are recommending that it come from a regional and or a larger body, not individual jurisdictions that come together to cooperate and collaborate on that. So I'll give you guys more information as we learn more information about it. The NOFO does not come out until later this month, so there's not a lot of details available, but we'll share them as we get them.
All right, thank you so much, Christine. Is there any other business this board wishes to discuss? If not, I look forward to seeing you all, hopefully in person in June. I forgot what that's like. Cannot remember the last, it's been years, plural, years. So let's adjourn this meeting. If someone could make that motion, and look forward to seeing y'all in person.
So moved.
Motion from Mr. Payne. Who's seconding it?
Second.
Second from Dylan Bishop. All right, any further discussion? All right, we're gonna do a vote of acclamation. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. See y'all. Any opposed? Hearing none. No discussion. Nice to see you guys virtually, and look forward to being in person next month. Thank y'all so much, and see you then. Bye, Christine.
Good evening, y'all.
Have a good evening, guys. Thank you.
Bye,
Hi, everyone.
Everyone.
Bye, everyone.